Thank you everyone for coming. This event, the Master Investor event, is completely sold out, and there are people who are trying to get in who are not registered. So I think every seat will be taken relatively soon when people get in off the tube or whatever. And that's a testimony to the fact that this ecosystem is growing. The first people that I met on my own short journey in this area compared to their long journey were Aubrey de Grey, who is right at the back there and is the real inspiration for me at the beginning, and edited the book Juvenescence with a very large red pen when it first came out, and has been fantastic mentor, introducer of companies, and proselytizer for the industry, and we're very lucky to have him. So I think everyone should give Aubrey a clap, because without him, this would not be happening. And then there are plenty of other friends in the room. Nir Barzilai has flown in from New York, and as you know, he's Mr. Metformin and will tell us all about it earlier on. He's very disapproving of anyone who touches the master investor pastries in the antechamber beforehand, so watch out, he's watching you. We have Mike West from California, as we know. We have people from all around the world. We have representatives from Oman, who will be hosting the first and not the last Muscat Longevity Forum in February of next year. Muscat's a lovely place, Oman is a lovely place, and if you want a great holiday combined with even more longevity stuff, then register for that event. But as I said, this is part of an ecosystem that is growing. It's not just us at the Longevity Forum, but other people are setting up events around Longevity Week. For instance, the Global Longevity Agenda took place yesterday, and 200 or 300 people were at that. And we had a science summit in Oxford where some eminent scientists spoke to us about what's going on at the cutting edge of science. I must say I only understood about half of it, but it was absolutely fascinating. There's an International Longevity Policy and Governance Summit going on. There was a Singapore forum yesterday, which is a direct outcrop of the Longevity Forum. There's today, and tonight there is a Nature dinner sponsored by Nature magazine, which, as you know, is the leading biotech publication in the world, with their editor-in-chief at that dinner. And Alex Zed is somewhere here in the audience, I think, is kindly sponsoring that event. And then, of course, tomorrow is the main Longevity Forum. We are about 70% oversubscribed on that, so I don't know how Trish is going to fit the people in there, but it's really wonderful that this is all coming together, that all the key players in this industry are coming together in a collaborative way, and educating in a variety of dimensions. So the investment dimension today, you'll learn how to invest in this sector. As yet, there are relatively limited ways of investing, but there are some really super cool companies out there, and some of which will presumably be coming public in the next year or so. And the social science side of it, which is represented or led by my partner in the Longevity Forum, Andrew Scott, who wrote The 100-Year Life, is also very important, because if we do live to 110 or 120, who's going to pay for us? How are we going to fund ourselves? You won't be able to retire at 65. What's the dimension of social care? What's the dimension of consumption and so forth? And so this is going to be a very interesting week, and I know some people are here for all the events of the week, so I really hope that you enjoy it, you benefit from it, and you tell the world about how important this longevity science, which is now coming into its own, is. Now, I have a trading operation here in London, so we do some trading in currencies, gold, stocks, etc., but really that's done by other people in my office. I'm interested as an investor and as a human being in three main meta themes. One is climate change, which everyone should be interested in, because it really is affecting us. And if you, I think there's one person from Australia here today, if you've been reading about the Sydney bushfires, which are unusual for this time of year, but are devastating large parts of the suburbs of Sydney, then you'll see how this climate change is in effect. Then the next one is clean meat, and my colleague Anthony Chow, who's somewhere here, is heading up our effort in that direction. And I can tell you right now that in 10 years' time, the whole of agriculture will be changed by cultivated meat and alternative proteins, partly because it ticks all the environmental and zeitgeist boxes that you can think of, and partly because there just isn't enough protein to go around in this world for the Chinese and Indians who want to eat meat along with the rest of the developed world. And then lastly, and most importantly, is the theme of today, which is longevity. I think this will be the biggest industry in the world. I've been on record saying that for 2 or 3 years, and it is showing unbelievable promise just in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I'm revising my book Juvenescence at the moment, and there's so much change and so much opportunity that's emerging in the field. And I'm more and more convinced that as long as we stay off the pastries, as long as we don't smoke, as long as we do a bit of exercise, and I'm sure Nia will give you personal consultations on what we should be doing in that respect, we can live for another 10 years. Some of these therapies and drugs will be in wide dispersal and will have a monumental effect on humanity. But first of all, climate change, it's difficult to invest in because everyone knows about it. So, the wind power, the solar is well established, the returns are relatively small. I think energy storage is a great area to look at in the next 10 years or so. Energy storage will probably increase by 10 to 20 times. So there are opportunities in that. And watch this space, because I'm sure Master Investor will do something on climate change. We know that this is happening. I hope there are no climate change deniers in this audience, because it's madness to believe that this is not happening as a result of man's intervention in the climate. Clean meat, I mentioned earlier on, it's going to be absolutely enormous. There are sausages, beef patties, there are fish substitutes, all being grown in labs at the moment in experimental sizes or scales, but very soon what I call Moore's Law, which is an analogue of Moore's Law, which you're all familiar with, will come into play, and the scale will go up, the price will come down, and we'll all be eating this stuff. And you've probably seen Beyond Meat, which is a plant-based substitute. We're not really interested in the plant-based substitutes, but the cultivated meat will be even bigger than that. And so watch that space, but particularly watch longevity and the field of what we call juvenescence. I wrote a book before I'd met Aubrey, Mike, Nia, etc., Reason 7 years ago about biotech as it then was, and I've been investing in biotech for about 15 years now. And in those short 7 or 8 years since Cracking the Code came out, we've had the development of artificial intelligence for novel discovery of drugs, and Alex Zakharonov of In Silico Medicine recently published in Nature magazine the fact that he can discover novel compounds in 45 days, relative to the canonical way of the past, which was 3 years. So there is definitely huge strides being made in that did not exist 7 years ago. Cancer immunotherapy. I've just been in Guy's Hospital because I wanted to find a place to have a cup of coffee before this meeting. Cancer will probably be a chronic or curable condition within the next 10 or 20 years as a result partly of immunotherapy, which didn't exist just 7 years ago, and next year I think Anthony had a slide that showed it will be about $150 billion in sales. The cure of hepatitis C did not exist 7 years ago, and CRISPR-Cas9 that you're all familiar with, the form of gene editing that's sort of sweeping the world at the moment and its derivatives, the papers had only just been published on it, and now there are multi-billion-dollar companies around CRISPR-Cas9. So my point is, this is not really visible to the general public, these amazing advances in the last 7 years. The advances of the next 7 years will be even greater, and they will largely be concentrated in the longevity space. This is going to be a multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry, and we better take note of it, because if we are going to live to 110 or 120, who's going to pay for us? The best way of doing it is to invest in the things that will keep you alive to 110 or 120, then you've hedged your bets in every direction. So I urge investors to have a look at this space and watch it very carefully. There are more and more companies becoming investable, and this day is very important in respect of educating us all on that. So there are some things that are available right now, but they don't work. I mean, caloric restriction does work, but you might get another 5% of life according to Aubrey, and you have to eat 25% less, so life feels like a very long and boring life, even if you do live a little bit extra longer. Parabiosis doesn't seem to work, although maybe some factors in young blood that are good. And as you know, this was one of the dear leaders from Korea. He ordered his doctors, just before he died at the age of 82 to keep him alive to 120. Obviously didn't work, and I think the doctors didn't live very long thereafter either. 2 or 3 years ago, if I'd shown you the slide of companies in the field, it would have been about a third of the number of companies. And today you've got Meds raising money at a $16 billion valuation. Calico, which is Google's subsidiary, has had $2.5 billion put in it. Our own Lygenesis, which came through Aubrey de Grey, is doing a funding round at the moment, which Juvenescence will obviously lead. That will be in sick patients in the first half of next year. It's an amazing technology. I think it'll be spoken about today. Unity, I met with Ned David a couple of days ago. They're doing human trials at the moment in phase 1 and phase 2. Juvenescence, our own company, raised in the last year about $170 million US, and it's doing a new funding round, or trying to do a new funding round at a very hefty valuation, which is highly justifiable given the stuff that's, at least we think it's highly justifiable. And Nir Barzilai is in part representing Cobar, which is a listed company in the US. It's really exciting, and he'll talk about that later. In Silico Medicine has just done a Series B round, bringing in companies like Baidu in China and Kunming Ventures, which is the leading AI venture capital firm in the world, not just in China, and that's also super exciting. So lots of great stuff happening in this field. The fact of the matter is that there's $140 billion plus of anti-aging stuff sold every year at the moment. The creams from Clarins, the pills, the vitamins, the longevity extension supplements, and all this sort of stuff. None of it actually works. So just imagine how big this market will be when the stuff does work. We're the first cohort on the planet for whom bioengineering is possible, in large part due to the efforts of the people I've highlighted earlier on. And I don't know why it is that we're the first cohort, but we're very lucky to be in this period. And so I really hope you enjoy today, that you learn some stuff, and that you find some investments that will make you tons of money. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.